E.
Hello, student. Welcome back. In our conversation, we have mentioned there are different causes or reasons that cause war. Actually, wars are not new things. Probably you already know. Starting from Stone Age, people will fall for resources. That's the basic reason for the originate of war. And we also know there are a lot of examples in human history which explain why the lack of resources may lead to wars. So, Jeannie, would you like to give some examples?
So, as human beings, we need to survive. So, one important thing is we need food. So, after we get rid of being hunters all the time, we start to plant different plants, vegetables or fruits to become our food. So, we are getting into agriculture, and our society based on agriculture are founded. So then when we came to the Greeks have a really interesting perspective. In our reading, it's mentioned that some people believe that wars can be a kind of natural disaster.
Yeah.
Actually, the thinking comes from the Greeks. They saw that war is a kind of natural disasters. So if there are nature disasters, then we know our plants or fruits, our agricultural society will be influenced by these natural disasters. So for the Greeks, there are two important city-states, the Athens and the Sparta. So around 464 BC, there was a huge earthquake in Sparta. So that was so bad that nation state even wanted to ask for help from the Athens, their old enemy. So finally, they decided not. But the Athens has already sent a group of people on their way. So the Athenians became really mad. So they started a whole war, and that led to the declination of the Athens. There really are some wars, right, between these states. So natural disasters can lead to this kind of major war, but we probably would not imagine that when we hear that war can be a kind of natural disaster.
Yeah, and because now in our society we are very lucky. We live in a very peaceful society now. However, as Jeannie just mentioned, an earthquake or a drought or a flood may give a very big harm to a country. And probably this country may have to ask for help from other country. And if another country refuses to help the country, then probably war may happen at the end. And just a similar example I just think about is like in Chinese history, in Dongzhou, there is a country called Jin, and there is a country called Qin. So students probably know that. And there is a big drought in Qin country, and they ask help from Jin. They ask whether they can give some resources like rice or crops to help these people to live at least for a short time. However, that country refused to help them, and that led to a big war, like the war happened in India.
So that sometimes be the case, because in the past, the countries, the size are smaller than our current understanding of right nation or modern countries. That's a totally different thing. So previously, when we consider really big country or state or empire, when they encountered natural disaster that may be costly, that may be really harmful to the destiny of that particularly empire or nation. So perhaps, right, some of our students also visit Central or South America during their free time. So you probably heard of the great empire, Maya. So it was so great, But then there was a really huge drought
Yeah.
for that empire. Then they are trying to find other places,
Yeah.
but it's still so costly. So that's kind of ended the life of the empire. That's also possible.
Yeah.
And some of the empires or other countries, well, would like to shift the attention. They would not like to find help or assistance within the country, but instead they will go to invade other countries or send the army to other places for these resources. So that comes to our second reason about war. So the second reason is they are trying to be defensive,
Yeah.
right? To defend, right, its own country.
Yeah.
So also maybe as you probably can recall many cases in Chinese history.
Yeah. So student, you probably know that in Chinese history there are a lot of changes in different dynasty, and not every dynasty can remain as an empire, a big country. Like Song dynasty, they remain just like a smaller country. However, because the reason we just mentioned, the first reason, the country around this dynasty, around the country, cannot find enough resources for it. So they try to attack China at that time. So at that time, the country tried very hard to just defend themselves. But at the end, probably it fell. So the dynasty ended.
So in Chinese history, we heard there are different tribes, maybe from the north, maybe from the west, maybe from the south. And as I mentioned, maybe their development of agriculture was not so successful. So they consider the dynasties or those people who hold power of the Chinese territory on steady supply of the rice. Or other
Crops.
sources, other crops. So would like to attack that dynasty for these resources. And actually, that's the reason how the Mongolian Empire got started. They were trying to search for more reliable crops or the supply of the crops.
Yeah. If you know the history of Mongolian, although it started from the southern part of Chinese territory, but it moved to European and along to Russia, and it attacks a lot of different countries. And at that time, a lot of war happens. A lot of the country, like Russia, they tried to defend themselves, but it failed. So at the end, the Mongolian hold a very big empire. But because, as Jeannie mentioned, they attack people just for resources, so they didn't spend a lot of time on building their own politic culture or building their own ways of doing this or ruling this country, so they fail very easily.
So I guess that's about the first section of our lecture. So in the first part of our lecture, we talk about the first two reasons of war. So now we get two questions regarding to the first part. The first question would be, we mentioned several natural disasters that could be the causes of war. So what are they? Can you name one or two for us?
Yeah, and my second question is, we mentioned aside from resources, some country may try to defend themselves and then they get involved into wars. So can you give us some of the examples?
Okay, see you.